Tonight, tall tales. Controversial white van duo arrested. Salvage possible. Emerging markets guru shows the government how to save loss-making entities.
So I think high priority for the Sri Lankan government is to list these state-owned enterprises, even, by the way, if they're losing money.
Boomerang. Partili Champika yet again denies involvement in hit and run. All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Saturday, the 14th of December, 2019.
මේ සීන් එකෙන් කට් වෙන්න. ඇන්ටිජර් මවුත්වොෂ් සමගින් එන ක්ලෝස් අප් ජෙල් එක ස්ටෝරි එක ස්ටාර්ට් කරන්න.
Hi.
Hi.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Hello, good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammika Kanaga. Let's start with your local stories. More police officers gave evidence before the Presidential Commission probing the Easter Sunday attacks today. Now, yesterday it was revealed before the Commission that logbooks at the Kottahena police were doctored to indicate that there were 4 warnings of an attack. Today it was the turn of the ASP of the Colombo North Police Division and the then acting OIC of the Demotagoda Police Station to be grilled. The first to give evidence before the Presidential Commission of Inquiry probing the Easter Sunday attacks today was ASP Naranjala Abeyewardena of the Colombo North Police Division. He told the Commission that he was not aware of any letters of warning of an impending attack on Easter Sunday. He added that although he spoke with the Superintendent of Police in charge of the Colombo North Police Division, Sanjeeva Bandara, on the 21st of April, the day of the attack, nothing about an attack was mentioned. Next to give evidence was the then acting OIC of the Demotagoda Police Station, Chief Inspector M.D. Anil Jayantha. He said that he was on leave for 5 days from the 17th of April. Furthermore, Jayantha noted that he did not receive any letters of warning prior to the Easter attacks and he was on duty on the 21st and the 22nd of April. Chief Inspector Jayantha added that SP Sanjeeva Bandara instructed him to make a note in the logbook saying that he received the warning letter prior to the 21st of April. He, however, said that he refused to do so. When asked why he refused, Chief Inspector Jayantha said that he was mindful of the consequences he would have to face when investigations are conducted. When asked whether it was only SP Sanjeeva Bandara who made the request, Chief Inspector Jayantha responded saying SP Bandara's personal assistant Upendra also made the request. The Commission then put to him that a letter was received by the Demotagoda Police on the 11th of April this year pertaining to disaster management under the same reference number borne by the warning letter on the attack. In response, Chief Inspector Jayantha said that it is his view that the move might be an attempt to indicate that the warning on the attack was issued in advance. The Commission's attention also fell on the explosion which occurred at a house in Demotagoda on the day of the attacks, and it questioned whether statements were recorded from anyone in relation to it. It was revealed that statements were recorded from the parents of the woman who blew herself up. Her mother had told in her statement that her daughter engaged in religious observances more on the day than she usually did. Statements have also been obtained from the domestic aide, and she had said that the woman who blew herself up kept the children who died in the explosion inside the room on the day.
ජෙල් සීන් ඇක්ෂන්. ඇන්ටිජර් මවුත්වොෂ් සමගින් එන ක්ලෝස් අප් ජෙල් එක ස්ටෝරි එක ස්ටාර්ට් කරන්න.
Now, the 2 individuals who had made controversial statements at a media briefing conducted by former Minister Dr. Rajitha Senaratne on the purported incidents regarding white van abductions was arrested by the Criminal Investigations Department. Now, they were taken into custody from the area of Mahara. The CID had commenced an investigation into a media briefing conducted by the former Health Minister in early November, along with 2 other individuals, where they made controversial statements. On the 10th of November this year, Senaratne had called 2 persons named Anthony Douglas Fernando and Atula Sanjeeva Madanayaka for the said media briefing, who made controversial statements and allegations regarding white vans and purported incidents of certain abductions, assassinations, robberies and forced disappearances during the administration of President Mahinda Rajapaksa. One of them had claimed that he was a white van driver involved in abducting people, while the other claimed he once served as a driver to transport a stock of gold in previously LTTE held areas. Considering a request made by the CID, the Chief Magistrate also ordered several media institutions to submit the unedited footage from this media briefing to the investigators for onward probes. The investigations in this regard were launched after a complaint was lodged by a person named Kumudu Pradeep Sanjeeva Pereira.
දරුවාගේ අස්ථි ප්‍රතිශක්තිකරණ පද්ධතිය සහ මානසික ක්‍රියා නිසි පරිදි පවත්වාගෙන යාමට දායක වන කැල්සියම්, විටමින් C සහ යකඩ අඩංගු මයිලෝ සමගින් පෝෂණයෙන් ඉදිරියට.
ඕනෑම ප්‍රමාණයක TV සඳහා 50% දක්වා වට්ටම්. දිවයින පුරා Softlogic සහ Softlogic Max ප්‍රදර්ශනාගාරවලින්.
Now, in the meantime, Defence Secretary Major General Kamal Gunaratne also touched on the duo who made controversial remarks, alleging to have been part of abductions with the use of white vans. Addressing an event held in Panavidi today, the Defence Secretary said that investigations are underway to ascertain the truth behind the drama.
ගෝඨාභය රාජපක්ෂ මහතා ජනාධිපති පදවියට පත් වුණාට පස්සේ ඔබට පේනවා ඇති රටේ ඇති වෙලා තියෙන වෙනස පලිගැනීම් ඒවා කිසිවක් නැහැ. ඡන්දය පැවති කාලයේදී ඔබ දකින්න ඇති එතුමාට මොනතරම් මඩ ගැහුවද මොනතරම් අපහාස කරාද මොනතරම් චෝදනා කරාද කියලා. ඉතින් අර අවසාන මොහොතේදී හිටපු ඇමතිවරයෙක් අර රැවුල්කාරයෝ දෙන්නෙකුත් එක්ක මාධ්‍ය සාකච්ඡාවට ඇවිල්ලා අපි කියන්නේ එකට වඩිග පටුන නැටුවා කියලා ඇවිල්ලා ලොකු විස්තරයක් කරා සුදු වෑන් වලින් අරන් ගිහිල්ලා කිඹුලන්ට කන්න දැම්ම කියලා මොනරාගල. ඉතින් අපි මේ පදවිවලට පත් වෙච්ච ගමන් මේ කිඹුලන්ට කන්න දැම්මේ කාවද කොහොමද කවුද දැම්මේ කියලා හොයන්න අපි පරීක්ෂණයක් පටන් ගත්තා. ඒ පරීක්ෂණයේ ප්‍රතිඵල ලැබෙමින් පවතිනවා. තමුන්නාන්සේලා සියලු දෙනාටම වඩිග පටන නටපු දෙන්න දකින්න හම්බ වෙයි අනාගතයේදී. ඒ අයව මෙහෙයුවේ කවුද? ඒ අයව ඒ තත්ත්වයට පත් කළේ කවුද? මුදල් කොච්චර ලබා දුන්නද කියන ඒවත් එළි වෙයි ඉස්සරහදී. ඉතින් මේ වගේ දේවල් අපි සිද්ධ වෙන්න ඉඩ තියන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ වගේම අපිට මර්ධනකාරී පියවරවල් ගන්න අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. අර ස්විට්සර්ලන්ත තානාපති නිලධාරී කාර්යාලයේ කතන්දරේ ඔබ සියලු දෙනාම අහලා ඇති. රජය අපහසු කිරීමට ජනාධිපතිතුමා අපහසු කිරීමට කරන ලද සැලසුම් සහගත නාටකයක කොටස තමයි තමුන්නාන්සේලා ඒ දැක්කේ. නාටකය සියල්ලම අලගිය තැන්, මුල්ගිය තැන්, වැල්ගිය තැන් හැම දෙයක්ම අපි සොයාගෙන ඉවරලා අපි තානාපති ප්‍රජාවට අපි ඒක දන්වලා තියෙනවා මෙන්න මෙහෙමයි සිද්ධ වුනේ මෙන්න මේකයි කියලා. ඉතින් ඒ නිසා ඒ අයට හම්බුන්නේ රජය අපහසුතාවයට පත් කරන්න.
Now, ambassadors of the nations representing the ASEAN region called on President Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the President's office last evening. Envoys representing Thailand, Indonesia, Myanmar, Vietnam and Malaysia gave their felicitations to the Sri Lankan head of state. Developing bilateral relations between Sri Lanka and the ASEAN countries were discussed in the meeting, and the ambassadors pledged their commitment to the endeavour. Furthermore, they also brought to focus achieving future objectives by developing regional cooperation. Now, investments and bilateral relations were the topics of discussion when visiting Japanese Foreign Minister called on Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa yesterday. Meanwhile, today the Premier was in Kataragama, where he engaged in religious observances. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa visited the Kataragama Kirivehera temple and called on Chief Incumbent Venerable Koboka Dhamminda Thera today. He also engaged in religious observances at the temple. The Prime Minister received warm responses from the people in Kataragama. In the meantime, PM Rajapaksa also engaged in religious observances at the Ruhunumaha Kataragama Devalaya. The Prime Minister then called on the Chief Judicial Prelate of the Ruhunumaha Gampattuwa, Venerable Kapugama Saranathissa Thera, at the Abhinavaramaya Temple in Kataragama. In the meantime, last evening, visiting Japanese Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi called on Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa at the temple trees and had discussions on promoting Japanese investments in Sri Lanka. Noting the bilateral relations that date back 66 years, the Prime Minister said that Sri Lanka and Japan have good relations and the hope is to make them even stronger. Both delegations also discussed the status of existing joint projects such as work at the Bandaranaike International Airport and the Central Expressway. MP Partli Champika Ranawaka insists that the alleged hit and run he is implicated in is a simple accident, despite him being slapped with an overseas travel ban yesterday. When the incident occurred back in 2016, the victim's friend said that it was the former minister who was behind the wheel. MP Partli Champika Ranawaka, who was a cabinet minister of the previous government of good governance, had allegedly made a hit and run, victimising Sandeep Sampath on the 28th of February in 2016. Stirring controversy, an individual named Dilum Tusitakumara came forward, claiming that he drove the vehicle in question. However, friends of Sandeep Sampath contradicted that, saying it was the then minister Partli Champika who drove the vehicle at the time of the incident. Although that was the case, Partli Champika was released from the case. However, upon investigations launched by the Colombo Crime Division, Colombo Magistrates Court No. 4 imposed an overseas travel ban on Partli Champika Ranawaka yesterday. Meanwhile, addressing a media briefing today, Parliamentarian Ranawaka insisted that he was cleared from the case following investigations.
මොහමඩ් වයිස් අවසානයේ රියදුරාට නුසලකලිමත් භාවයේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් දඩයක් ගහලා රුපියල් 3500ක ඒ නඩුව එතනින් හමාර කළා. මෙතන තියෙන සරල රියානතුරක්.
මේ සිද්ධිය වෙච්ච දවසේ සංදීප්ගේ යාළුවෙක් පුතුමාගේ ඩිෆෙන්ඩරේ පස්සෙන් ෆලෝ කළා දුන්නා. ඒ ෆලෝ කළා ඩිෆෙන්ඩරේ නවත්තා දුන්නා. නවත්තලා නැතුව පස්සේ පුතුමා බෑලා ඇවිල්ලා කිව්වා ඔව් මම පාන්දිකම් කියලා නවත්තා. ඒ ඔබ දැන් මේ කියන්නේ වෙන කතාවක්. හරි? නෑ නෑ එදා මේ සිද්ධිය වෙච්ච දවසේ. නෑ නෑ මේ ඔබ එදා මාධ්‍යයක් කියලා දුන්නේ නෑ. නෑ නෑ ඔබ මේ කියන්නේ වෙන කතාවක්. මේ ඔබ මේ මොන මාධ්‍යයේද? පුතා මොන මාධ්‍යෙන්නේ? දෙරණ මාධ්‍යෙන් ඔය කතාව පතුරවල හැරි. හරි? ඒකට ඔය කතාව තමයි ඔබතුමාලා පතුරවපු පට්ටපල් බොරු. ඔබතුමාලා පත් කරපු සාධින අධිකරණ තමයි තාමත් තියෙන්නේ. නැවතත් දීලා තියෙන්නේ ඔබතුමාට ඒක. නෑ ඒ වෙනත් අපි දන්නවනේ අධිකරණ වලට යම් යම් කරුණු දක්වනවා. මාව වරදකාරය කළා නෑනේ. මගෙන් පරීක්ෂණයට සහාය ලබා ගැනීම සඳහා කියලා අපි ඒවට අධිකරණය හරහා උත්තර දෙනවා. ඒකද තාජුදීන්ලගේ මේ සිද්ධ සම්බන්ධී අවුරුදු ගානක වීඩියෝ තියෙනවා. එතකොට CCTV දර්ශන මැකෙන්නේ කොහොමද? ඔබතුමා දන්නවද මැකුණාද කියලා? නෑ නෑ දත්ත නැති කියලා ඔබතුමා දන්නවද? නෑ නෑ අදාළ දත්ත නැහැයි කියලා ඔබතුමා දන්නවද? නෑ නැත්තම් අන්න ඒක උසාවියට ගිහිල්ලා කියන්නේ. ඔබතුමාගේ මාධ්‍ය ආයතනය අපි නම් කරනවා. සාක්ෂිකරුවන්ට තර්ජනය කළා කියලා සාක්ෂිකරුවන්ට ඒකත් විමර්ශනය කළා. උසාවියේදී ඒකත් කිසිම තර්ජනයක් නෙවෙයි. සිංගප්පූරුවට යන්න උදව් කළාය කියලා උදව් කරන්නම් කියලා කිව්වයි කියලා දුරකථන ඇමතුමක් දුන්නා කියලා ඒකත් පරීක්ෂණයට ලක් කළා.
When AdaDerana called at Sandeep's residence, what his parents wanted was justice for their son. They said that despite meeting the minister 3 times, all pleas fell on deaf ears and urged the current government to take the matter up. What's more, they said that a police officer visited them at home and asked them to withdraw the entry they made with the police, saying the relevant police officer's job was on the line. The victim, however, with limited function, only wants one thing, which is his physical health be restored so he can go about his own affairs. The water supply for most of the areas in Colombo is suspended for 24 hours and it is now in effect. The disruption to the water supply, which commenced at 8 p.m, covers the areas of Colombo 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15. In the meantime, the National Water Supply and Drainage Board said that the water supply for Colombo 5 and 6 will be under low pressure. Prices of locally manufactured cement has been reduced by 100 rupees per bag of 50 kilograms. The price reduction was confirmed by State Minister of Internal Trade and Consumer Welfare Anura Priyadarshana Yapa. The price slash has been made owing to the recent cuts made to value-added tax along with other taxes. Now, the third largest graphite mine in Sri Lanka to be registered after World War II began work recently. 53,000 metric tons of graphite is expected to be extracted from the mine within the next 20 years, with the quality of the product also said to be rather superior.
Excavations of the graphite mine spanning across 7 acres in Attanagalla began 3 years ago. The mining was done by a Canadian company together with the Geological Survey and Mines Bureau.
අපේ ඉල්ලීම තමයි මේ ලබා ගන්නා මිනිරන් නිෂ්පාදන පුළුවන් තරම් value added products විදියට රෝ අමුද්‍රව්‍ය වශයෙන් අපනයනය කරන්නේ නැතුව ලංකාවට උපරිම මිල ලංකාවට ලැබෙන පරිදි ඒ නිෂ්පාදනයන් වර්ධනය කරලා මිල එකතු කරලා නිෂ්පාදනය කරන්න කියන එක. ඒ සඳහා තමයි අපි දිරිගැන්වීම කරන ලබන්නේ.
We estimate that we'll be able to take out about 20 tons initially a month. By the end of 2020, we should be at around 200 tons a month. The graphite here, as you know, now is of very high quality. I think the last testing that we had sent to the GSMB laboratory, 97% carbon content. Upgrade level is just 3 to 4% to get it to battery content, which is 99.9 for the lithium ion batteries. I must credit our employees because so far, without having had all the explosives and electric saws and fancy machines, we have manually done all this. We can compete with anyone in the world.
The mine stands at a depth of 150 feet from ground level and its first extraction work began yesterday.
They've invested almost 4.5 million US dollars so far in starting this production. So these new companies coming and starting a new mine in this area, which is particularly in an area where there was no mining before, is a good thing because it brings about new economic input to the area. It creates employment and also it's going to add to the national output and national income. And I was told that this company will, over the next 3 to 4 years, will in fact increase the country's output by about 5 times. Am I correct?
Minimum.
Minimum. Though you are starting initially with raw graphite, which of course of better quality than many other production that is coming from the rest of the world, we urge you to get into value addition as fast as possible because that is one the government is looking for.
We'll be back after this short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, emerging markets guru Dr. Mark Mobius says the highest priority of the Sri Lanka, or the new Sri Lankan government rather, should be given to listing state-owned enterprises in order to increase their transparency and thereby turning around these massive loss-making enterprises into ventures that contribute to the national development. Speaking to Indiwari Amwatha at Hyde Park on AdaDerana during his visit to Sri Lanka, Dr. Mobius said such decisions should be taken even if the losses are too heavy for the economy.
Talking about reviving state-owned enterprises, that is also a matter that Sri Lanka is grappling to address. Do we privatize or do we go into semi-government and private-owned entities, or do we have boards to manage them? How do you look at this?
I think, the word privatization is a dirty word for many people because they think, oh, we're losing our sovereignty and so forth. And you don't have to privatize. What you do have to do is increase the transparency of these state-owned enterprises. What does that mean? It means you list the companies. So if you take the example of China, many of the large state-owned banks in China, large state-owned companies like Chalco, the aluminum company of China, they're still majority controlled by the government, but they're listed. Now, what does listing mean? It means that you are now responsible to shareholders, and of course the government is your main shareholder. But there's more transparency because once you list, you must reveal your financial statements, you must tell people what you're doing with the money, what the dividends are, et cetera, et cetera. So I think high priority for the Sri Lankan government is to list these state-owned enterprises, even, by the way, if they're losing money.
Even if they're losing money?
Even if they're losing money, because with the listing, there'll be much more transparency to determine why they are losing money. And this will be addressed eventually. And by the way, you'll be surprised to find that people are still invested in money-losing companies. In the internet, there are many money-losing companies that are invested. It depends on what the vision for these companies going forward is going to be.
I remember in 2015, you referred to revisiting agreements with China and development agreements that we have signed, but you weren't very happy about it. You said this might not send a good indication to potential investors.
What I was referring to at that time was favoring China. In other words, if you say, okay, we're going to privatize this, not privatize or list the state-owned enterprise, we're going to favor China in lieu of other countries, that is not a very good policy because that means that you discourage other investors. But I would say, generally speaking, the Chinese have done very, very well. But the key is transparency. In other words, you've got to be very transparent in what you do, and you must not be afraid of losses by a company because once it's determined where the losses are coming from and why, then these companies can turn around and they can be making money. In other words, it's a chicken and egg situation. Unless you have the transparency and you understand what is happening in the company, you'll never be able to determine where the losses are coming from. By the way, the other reason for listing is that, as you know, more and more money around the world is going into ETFs, exchange-traded funds. which are funds which invest according to the index. The index is determined by the market capitalization, the size and liquidity of companies and the market. So the degree to which Sri Lanka can increase the size of the stock market and the size of the companies that are listed, which means state-owned enterprises, they will get more money coming in automatically because the exchange-traded funds must invest in these companies that are heavily weighted in the index.
Now, the deficit in the trade account contracted in October 2019 to $838 million from $903 million in October 2018. On a cumulative basis, the trade deficit contracted by $2,405 million to $6,451 million during the first 10 months of 2019, in comparison to $8,857 million in the corresponding period of 2018. Now, decline in imports of personal vehicles and gold were the major contributory factors for the contraction of the trade deficit. Meanwhile, the terms of trade, which represents the relative price of imports in terms of exports, deteriorated by 5.7% year-on-year in October as export prices declined at a faster pace than the decline in import prices. In the meantime, earnings from merchandise export declined marginally by 0.2% year-on-year to $977 million US dollars, that is, in October this year, as a result of lower agricultural exports. Decline in earnings from agricultural exports in October 2019 was driven by lower earnings from all subcategories except minor agricultural products. Accordingly, earnings from tea exports declined due to lower average export prices in line with fall in international market prices despite an increase in export volumes. The export volume index in October 2019 improved by 13.8% on year-on-year, while the export unit value index declined by 12.3%, indicating that the decline in exports was driven entirely by lower prices when compared to October 2018. In merchandise imports, a contraction continued for the 12th consecutive month with a 3.5% decline year-on-year in October 2019 to $1,816 million US dollars, driven by lower consumer and investment goods imports. The import volume index increased by 3.8%, while the unit value index, that is, narrowed by 7% in October 2019, indicating that the decline in imports was driven entirely by lower prices when compared to October 2018. Now, the US and China have announced a preliminary trade agreement. The so-called Phase 1 deal will see billions of dollars in tariffs removed or delayed. US stocks hit a fresh record on hopes there will be a continued softening of trade tension between the world's two largest economies. A fresh wave of US tariffs on Chinese imports was due to take effect today, in fact. However, this has been cancelled for now. US President Donald Trump said that negotiations will commence on the Phase 2 deal immediately rather than wait until after the 2020 election. If the new higher tariffs had gone ahead, Chinese-made goods such as smartphones, clothing and toys would have become more expensive for Americans just ahead of Christmas. U.S. negotiators are reportedly offering significantly reduced existing tariffs on about $360 billion worth of Chinese imports. In return, China has promised to buy large quantities of U.S. soybeans, poultry and other agricultural products. See you after this very short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, the general election in Britain may have ended with a resounding landslide victory to PM Boris Johnson's Conservatives, but not all are happy with it. Now, several hundred noisy protesters marched through central London yesterday to protest against Britain's election result. The protest turned violent as protesters pushed against lines of police. Brandishing signs that read "Defy Tory Rule" and "Refugees Welcome," protesters marched at speed from outside Johnson's Downing Street residence to Trafalgar Square and onto the Theatre District, blocking traffic and drawing heavy police presence. Now, addressing the Doha Forum today in Qatar, Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad stated that US sanctions imposed on Iran is unfair and it violates the United Nations Charter and international law. He said that Malaysia does not support the reimposition of the unilateral sanctions by the United States against Iran, and most of the countries, including Malaysia, has lost a big market because of the sanctions. Adding further, he stated that such sanctions can only be applied by the United Nations in accordance with the Charter. Now in sports, the fourth day of the first test between visiting Sri Lanka and Pakistan was abandoned without a ball being bowled due to waterlogged outfield in Rawalpindi Cricket Stadium. Heavy rains and bad light interrupted the match throughout. Yesterday's play was only restricted to 5.2 overs owing to delayed start and bad light. Sri Lanka is still on their first innings with the scoreboard reading 282 runs for the loss of 6 wickets. Dhananjay De Silva is meanwhile still unbeaten on 87 runs. Tomorrow is the last day of the first test match. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.